Hello, Year 8. I won't be in today as I'm on an in-service. So let's have a look at what we can do this week, starting this week, because it's exam revision week. First thing is the Beyond Justice assignment. I've opened until tonight. So you've got all day. If you haven't finished it, you can put it in and submit it today. It's been open, so you're okay there. Now there's exam revision, which you may or may not have a physical copy of it. I'll go over that. There's Beyond Justice exam revision. There's Good and Evil and Sacraments exam revision. And I've uploaded a copy of the 2023 exam so you can have a look at that and see how you go. So the first thing, let's go and have a look at the exam revision. This year, as in past years, the exam will consist of section on multiple choice, a short answer section, including a table, and that'll be a table on the sacrament. A gospel parable, which is a gospel story, and you'll be asked to answer questions on it and respond to it. Looking at an oblate ministry, which is what you've just done in the justice assignment, and passages and responses. Then part C will be an extended response. All right, the multiple choice section is across all of semester 2 topics, all of them. The short answer sections will include questions on the sacraments. It'll include questions on good and evil, how we define it and what your response is to that. Also, there'll be a table, that'll be a sacraments table. Remember that? We had it in our test and we did it a few times. We'll be looking at the school motto and what it means to leave nothing undared. And there will be a parable which you will need to respond to. A parable, of course, being a story from the New Testament Gospels. Questions on social justice and what our response should be. Various types of injustice and poverty. There'll also be pictures about injustice, like we had in a test, and a response by you. In the extended response, part C, there will be images about sacraments. Could be a priest doing a baptism, so on and so on, any of the 7 sacraments, and then you'll be asked to respond and be asked questions on there. There will be images of good and evil, like the ones we had in our good and evil booklet, and also the ones in the social justice ones, where we had people walking past a homeless veteran. So that's what will be there. That's in this year's exam. So let's go and have a look at Beyond Justice. Now, some revision for the exam. Recall these, read these gospel sections, gospel stories, different ones, and then answer these questions on them. So from these questions, recall it, especially these ones, then get what Jesus is saying, what's relevant to social justice. Justice, despite all the definitions and the highfalutin words, justice is about how we treat people. What is Jesus telling us about how we should treat people, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from? Okay, more questions. Excuse me. Oblates of Mary Immaculate. That's who we are. We are oblates, right? Explain who they are. In your answer, explain how their mission involves promoting the teachings of Jesus about social justice. In other words, how do we promote how Jesus tells us to treat other people? Right? The motto, right? The motto of the school, leave nothing undared. What does this mean for students? What does it mean? And how does it lead to Mission Action Day? Okay, how does it link to Mission Action Day? And looking after the environment is also important. If we haven't got a healthy environment, then we can't breathe properly. It affects our health. We haven't got water, clean air, clean land, so on and so on. So they're the things we need to be looking at. All right, so let's have a look at we've done that one. So let's go to the next one, which is good and evil. Some questions for good and evil. You can have a look at these ones here. How can it be possible for evil choices to be made by people if God is all loving and he created a perfect world? Okay, what we're looking at there is free will. So you go through these. Remember how we defined evil and types of evil, and how we define good and how it's a choice. Also the metaphors, the Garden of Eden, the metaphors. Tree symbolises the choices which man can make. The fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and so on. Okay? Words Adam and Eve. Adam, which Jewish word, Hebrew word for first human. Okay? Genesis story true, right? Are the Genesis story true? They're not literally true, but the metaphor that they have, the metaphor and the images that they carry in those stories give us the message. And the message is very true. So here's an example of Jesus giving us a teaching. So you would be expected to read through that and define what Jesus is saying about justice. Okay, sacraments. What are the essential signs and actions for the Eucharist? It's the Mass. Symbols for baptism, sacrament of marriage, and so on and so on. And there'll be a table on the sacraments in the exam. So you need to have a look at that. So let's go and have a look at the exam. This is 2023 exam. This year, again, sacraments, social justice, experience of good and evil. Right? So it'll be similar. Multiple choice section, go through, answer these questions. Now you can print it off or you can just do it online. It's probably the simplest way. Right, short answer questions, sacraments, purpose of the sacraments. Here's an example of a table. So make sure you know the table. I keep saying that. Know the table. Right, marriage and ordination. Why are they called sacraments of service? Remember, there's initiation, right? Australia is a rich country. What does that mean for us, right? According to the Catholic Church, what is justice? Okay, dignity of the human person, treat all people equally because we're all made in the image and likeness of God, so on and so on. So you'll need to be able to do that. Types of injustice or poverty in the examples below. So you go through those. Here's a gospel passage. You read through that and answer the questions. Okay, now something that should be relatively easy for you at this stage because you've just done an assignment on an oblate mission. So you can go through those, and that should be easy for you to example. Good and evil, right? Good and evil, an opinion about the following statement, right? Suffering is all around in our world. Think about suffering and whether it equals evil or not, which it doesn't. Okay, here's an example, right? An example, some writing and an incident that happened, right? So you can then answer questions on that. Here we got questions on, here's an image of a sacrament, baptism, and you're answering questions on it. So you will have similar things. Consider the images below, good and evil. Okay, you can find good and evil in those things. So that's the 2023 exam. So that's what I want you to be focusing on starting this morning. All right, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.